Good morning. I hope everyone had a good weekend. If there are any mothers on the line, happy belated Mother's Day. I'm VR Small. I'm the founder and CEO for the Veteran Women's Enterprise Center. It's a national initiative we launched here in Southern Dallas to help women veteran-owned businesses scale for success. If you'd like to have more information about our organization, please visit our website at veteranwomensec.org. I would like to let you know that our congressman, they are having a fire alarm that's going off in the building. So he will be on with us momentarily. In the meantime, I want to give you a quick update on the center. For those of you who want to know and continue to support us, every Monday, we do our Monday morning message. It's at 10 a.m. Central Time. So please mark that on your calendar. We'll be updating you with our guests for next week very shortly, and you can get all of that information on our website. Also, our partner is the Dallas ISD, which is Dallas Independent School District, is working with us on these programs, and we appreciate their support. Also, we regularly have what we like to call our Trending Thursdays tips. That is every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and we welcome your input on potential topics. These events are designed to help you stay connected to the resources that you need to be successful and to move your business forward. So if there's something that you need that we have not brought to the table, please let us know. You can enter that information in the chat room. I don't see Stephanie on yet, so let me let you know how Q&A will be conducted. You can privately message me with your questions, and at the time of Q&A, we will present them to our speakers. So again, you can message me, VR Small, or the Veteran Women's Enterprise Center, however it's coming up on your screen, privately with your questions, and during the Q&A, I will bring them up on the screen. I want to check and see if the congressman is back on yet. He is not. So as I said earlier, they are experiencing a fire alarm in the Congress building, and so they had to jump off for a minute, but we're going to get started with our associate administrator. Larry Stubblefield is here with the SBA. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, VR. Thank you for having me here today again.
Larry, as always, I want you to go ahead and give our attendees a brief introduction about what you do at the SBA and the program. It is a veterans-focused program, so we appreciate all your work within the veteran entrepreneur community.
Yeah, I'm the Associate Administrator in SBA's Office of Veterans Business Development. And for the most part, we empower transitioning service members, veterans, military spouses, reservists, and National Guardsmen with the tools needed to either start, grow, or expand their businesses. So we do that with a variety of programs. You know, one of our more popular programs is our Boots to Business program, which is a part of the DoD Transition Assistance Program. But we also have entrepreneurial training programs for women, for service-disabled veterans, and for those who are interested in federal procurement.
So Larry, we normally start with the congressman, and as soon as he does join us, we'll bring him to the forefront, because Congress usually looks at what's going on from design. They design programs that they believe are going to help our communities, and then they approve the funding. But it's the SBA that actually puts all of these strategies into play. So can you give us a little feedback on how the latest round of funding has been helping our veteran community? For one, are we seeing more small businesses getting to the table? And we usually recognize that based on the size of the loans or the amounts of the loans that have been allocated. I know at one time we weren't reopening, we were just going through those that were already in the spin. So could you tell us a little bit about how that's been working out for the business community?
Sure, absolutely. So needless to say, at SBA, you know, we've been working around the clock to support the small business community. And before I talk about the lending programs, I just want to talk just a minute briefly about our resource partners. So again, when you talk about resource partners associated with SBA, we're talking about, you know, some 14,000 business advisors located across the country in some 1,200 locations. So there's an SBA business advisor near all of your listeners, in some form or fashion. So when I talk about our business advisors, we're encouraging small business owners, veteran business owners, to check in with one of our 68 district offices. We have our SCORE chapters around the country, our women business centers, the small business development centers, and then our veteran business outreach centers. We have 22 of those located around the country as well, covering all 50 states and territories. So if anyone is interested in visiting a resource partner, to find a resource partner near you, go to sba.gov/local, and you'll be put in touch with how to get in touch, rather, with the resource partners near your area. Now,
Larry, can I just ask you a quick question? I know in that second round of funding was made available to some of our resource partners. Can you talk about what that funding was designed to do and what we can expect from our resource partners based on the additional funding that's come down from the SBA?
Yeah, that's a great question, VR, and you're leading me right into my next point. I was going to say, for the, speaking of the small business development centers and the women business centers, in the second round of the act that came out, the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act was the second act. Congress allocated funding to the small business development centers and the women business centers to expand their role, their outreach role. And what we're looking at here now is covering rural areas and underserved communities. So the SBDCs and the women business centers now are in the process of hiring additional staff, and they're going to be providing additional training. You're going to see a series of webinars coming out. And one of the things that they've already done with that additional funding, they've come up with a federal resource website that, that there's just a ton of information on this website from all across the federal government. We're talking about, information on taxes, personnel tips, cybersecurity, and so forth. And so I want to give your audience that site to assess the federal resource website. So it's sb.org. So there's no A, so I'll say it again, COVID-SB.org. And I'll bring you in, the viewers or listeners into that federal resource website. It, just like I said, has a ton of information there. Now, in terms of the lending, I want to briefly summarize the first round of the PPP first. So, as most of you probably know, you heard in the media, that SBA processed more than 14 years of loans in 14 days. I mean, that's just how busy we have been, working around the clock. And with those 14 years of loans in 14 days, we were able to support more than 1.6 million businesses and saved over 30 million jobs, according to Treasury. So since those funds, we've depleted those funds, and then we came out with the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act. An additional $310 billion was put into the PPP program. We have an additional $50 billion in disaster. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance Program, an additional $10 billion was put into that program. And for the first time ever, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program has been opened up to the farming community because, we all know the farmers are going through something now too. And the act also contained an additional $60 billion for the underserved community. So since the funds were reinstated for round two, you know, as of the 1st of May, we had done 2.2 million loans for over $175 billion. So we're you know, steadily at it with the PPP program.
Associate Administrator, can we break that down anymore? I mean, that's a lot of money, but is that money going again? Remember, we had the issues with big businesses getting a lot of money. Are we seeing more small businesses, more small loans that are coming in, or are we still seeing a lot of the larger loans? And I think I read in Forbes that a lot of the big businesses were giving back some of the money that they had taken, so give us an opportunity to open it up, or were we still just really winding down from the spend, the loans that were already in the spend, and we really didn't open up to any new loans? And that's a question, not a statement.
Yeah, well, with the first round of PPP, and I know we had the Shake Shacks and the Ruth Chris and LA Lakers and others that were involved, you know, going into the second round, you know, Treasury went out to those large businesses, and, you know, most of them volunteered to give the funding back. They gave the funding back. So we had a suspense date of the 7th of May for the large companies to give the funding back. So we're still working through that. And then the Treasury, you know, going around with this, the second round, that's where the 60 billion came in for underserved communities. And then we put a few more provisions in place to ensure that the lending is truly for the small business community, the moms and pops businesses that make our communities thrive and grow. So to answer your question, no large businesses participating in the second round. And if we look at the first round, the truth of the matter is 74% of the loans in that first round of PPP were for $150,000 or less. So 74% were for $150,000 or less. We're not spending the second round as quickly as we did the first round because we have the larger companies now, they're not playing. And so when you think about what small business really need, it's not the multi-million-dollar loans and things of that nature. So the funding is being spread out of a little more than it was the first time, with the additional funding coming back from those large companies going into the pool for the small companies.
Okay, Associate Administrator, I just want to check. I think the Congressman was able to jump on, and we know he has to take another call, so he's already behind schedule. If I see him, I want to see if we can let him in. Hello, Congressman Allred. How are you?
Hey, VR. I'm good. How are you? Yeah, I can hear you.
Associate Administrator, we're going to come right back to you. And thank you so much for that update.
Okay, sure. Absolutely.
Congressman, I hope there was no fire. Everything is okay.
No fire, just a false alarm. I guess. Great. I don't know what was happening.
So absolutely. The first thing I would love for you to do is just give our attendees a little overview about you, your district, some of the work that you're doing, and then we'll go into a bit of a question and answer about what's been going on with our COVID-19 relief in the small business community.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for everything you do and for always helping me reach out to some of our veterans in our area and some of our small business owners and some of the folks who are really needing to hear from us. And I really thank the Veteran Women's Enterprise Center just in general for organizing this call. And, for those of y'all who don't know, my name is Colin Allred. I'm a new member of Congress in the 32nd District. It means I have most of North and East Dallas, Richardson, Garland, Saxe, Wiley. And so I have North and Northeast part of Dallas County and a little bit of Collin County. I am in my first term and I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee. So it's a committee that I really wanted to be on. As many of y'all know, we have the second most veterans in the country right now in Texas. We actually have the most women veterans of any state in the country. And North Texas in particular is a place that's growing very rapidly in terms of our veteran growth. And so we really needed to have a voice on the Veterans Affairs Committee. And I'm proud to be on that committee and working for our veterans. And this is a great chance for me just to talk to y'all a little bit about what we've been doing because I know the administrator was talking about some of the SBA programs. Obviously, we created the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP is what I'll call it, so we don't have to say the whole mouthful, but we created the PPP program for small businesses. As was mentioned, it was intended to be for the very smallest to anything under 500 employees. So mom and pop shops, even the self-employed could get PPP loans, and it's a forgivable loan. And that's the thing that I always want to stress is if you are able to keep folks on your books and follow some of the guidelines that the Treasury has issued, the loan will be forgiven. So it's not even something that's going to add to the bottom line. Now, I know that in the first round, we had some issues with getting the money out there to some of our particularly veteran-owned and minority-owned and women-owned businesses. Some of the data that we saw was not very good. You have to partially understand that this is a program that's administered by banks. And so we, as much as we were encouraging the banks, and I certainly was, to give loans to as many people as possible to broaden their network, they began in many cases with the folks they had previous lending relationships with. And so that was not the intention of the program. In the second round of the money, which I think might have just been mentioned as I was getting on, we set aside $60 billion for medium and smaller financial institutions, including minority-owned institutions and credit unions that were seeing better success in getting money out there to more of the kind of smaller businesses, some of the folks who have not needed access to credit before in the past. And that really was the intention of the program. And we'll probably be adding to that and trying to make sure that as we're doing this program that we set up, this massive program that we set up in about a week, that it's actually doing everything we want it to do. I think it is a good program. I think it's the right thing for us to do. But of course, the administration of it is the hard part, and not all of it is in our hands as Congress. We passed the legislation, and the Treasury Department made some of the rules around how it was being implemented. And not all of them are the exact same as what we intended. And I'm sure some of them were things the Treasury had to do because that was the way it would work more efficiently. But here we are. And so go ahead.
Can I ask you a question about that? So
yeah.
Two questions around the PPP. One, is Congress putting anything in place around reporting so we can really see what's going on? We get some broad news about what was happening, but I know the associate administrator was saying really like 74% of those loans were under 150,000. So even though some of the big businesses jumped in there and took a lot of money, a lot of it did get to the small business community. Has Congress designed, established, recommended any kind of reporting that can give us more real time on what's happening? And then I noted that there was some conversation over the news for probably the last 2 weeks about businesses not being sure how to use the PPP fund. I know that once they got it, they were supposed to immediately start using it, but then we had some states and counties that were closed. And so how are we working with them, and how are we going to work with them to make sure they don't lose this money, they don't become non-compliant, and they can still utilize it for what it was designed to be utilized for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the administrator is right probably about the total number of loans. The amount of money is a different topic, though, because just because you issue a lot of smaller loans doesn't mean that most of the money went to small businesses, right? So we did have a lot of issues there. One of the stats that I saw at one point, and it might not have been the final statistic, was that about 4% of the loanees were getting about 45% of the loans. So that tells you that if you're getting a very large loan, you're only one loaner, but that means you're getting a large part of the pot. Now, as has been mentioned and been seen probably in the news, some of those companies have been asked to give that money back. Some of them have done voluntarily, and the Treasury Department is asking others to give it back, particularly the publicly traded companies that have other access to financing. Now, let me be clear. I want them to be saved too. I don't want their businesses to go under either. But we just wanted to create this program in particular for smaller businesses. And so we have a separate fund of money for larger businesses the Treasury Department is administering. And we have this PPP program is for 500 and under employees. And really the intention was, and this is to go to your point, VR, about how people can comply with it. The intention is to keep folks on the books through this crisis, and that when we get to the end of it, you will have that loan forgiven if you've been able to keep your employees on the books. There's a couple of reasons why we want to do that. Number one, to keep their health care. And during a pandemic, we want folks to keep their health care. Number two, they stay with their relationship with their small business some of these folks have been working for the same business for a long time. Some of them have obviously institutional memory. And if you lose those folks, it's very hard to replace them. And when you restart the economy, if you're having to go around and hire people and find talent and identify and interview and all that, it slows down the restarting process. So the intention is to keep people on the books so that they keep their health care, they keep their relationship with their employer, and the employer knows that they can reopen with confidence, that they'll have their employees in place. Now, there are some rules around the administration of it that Treasury created after we wrote the legislation so they can administer the program. And those are outside of our control, right, as a member of Congress. And some of them are a little bit confusing, and I recognize that. And there are some requirements around how much of the money has to be used for payroll and how much can be used for other costs. And so the best thing to do is to make sure that you work with your lender and with SBA to understand exactly how your payroll costs in particular, or how your overall costs, how you can use them to make sure that as much of your loan is forgiven as possible. And let's also say this, it is proportionate forgiving. So like if you don't meet the exact 100% forgivable, you might get 90% forgiven. And so it's not necessarily just an on-off switch where you either get it all forgiven or you have to pay it all back. It's proportionate. And so the kind of formula is keeping people on the books, and at the end of the period, have you kept those folks on the books? And if you have you met these criteria for how you're spending the money, you get it all forgiven. And every bit kind of below that, you get a percentage less basically forgiven. And so it's not as drastic as some folks might think. There are some things people don't know. Like, for example, if you've had to lay people off, if you've had to make that choice, you can hire them back during this period and still get the loan forgiven, or you can hire back even different people as long as you have the same workforce numbers and the same kind of, if you meet the formula. And so it's really something you have to kind of go through on a case-by-case basis, because it does depend on your business and what your costs are. But I want to make clear that we have a guide that my office has put together on my website. It's allred.house.gov/COVID, that's COVID 19 small business. It's a guide not only to the PPP program, but also to the EIDL Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. It includes basically all of the small business aid that is available right now from the federal government. And you can always call my office as well. So this is something that VRU not everybody knows this, but you can call us and we can help you. Now, we're not the agency. We're not going to be the ones like SBA that administers the program, or the bank that will issue the loan. But we can help answer your questions and we can point you in the right direction. And that's, for so many small businesses that I've talked to, the information kind of getting over that hurdle is such a big deal. We really want to make sure that people have all of this at their fingertips, because the other thing I'll mention is that PPP is a good program, but it's not the only loan that you should be considering if you're a small business that's struggling right now. You should look at the EIDL program as well. If you have an existing small business loan through the SBA, you have some loan forgiveness on that loan, as I'm sure the administrator will talk about. And so there are a lot of different options that you should consider. There's also state and city relief that has been made available by the state of Texas, by the city of Dallas, depending on what city you're in. And so you really need to look at the whole picture and kind of see what different programs work for you. You can do an EIDL loan and a PPP loan. You can get both. The EIDL loans are not forgivable, but they do have a $10,000 grant that can be forgiven, and they also have a very long payback period and a very low interest rate. So it's a really good loan to consider, and it actually has more flexibility on what it can be spent for.
And as you know, Congressman, we had the state and the city of Dallas on last week when the city of Dallas opened up their program, which is closing this Monday. For those of you who have not applied, that program is a lottery system, so you can still get your application in today before it's too late and have a chance of getting the resources that you need. I did want to ask you one more question, Congressman. I know your time is limited. I know you have another call, but you were about to talk about next steps. Is there any additional funding packages on the forefront, and what does that look like for the small business community? Yeah,
well, we're going to continue to support PPP, and so that will continue to be supported. We're going to continue to support EIDL, and I've seen that EIDL has also been had so many people trying to access it that it's starting to run out as well, and so we'll have to support both of those programs. And we're looking at some other things, another round potentially of direct payments to folks, which will also impact, of course, our small businesses, and some other programs that are not finalized yet, but once they are, I'll make sure that you know all about it, VR, and we can talk about it. And you mentioned, are we going to have any way of kind of overseeing what's happening with this money? And that's something that I know there's been some bipartisan interest in. And so I'm hoping that in this next package, we'll do that as well. You get an economic injury disaster loan from the SBA, that's a publicly available thing. We know that you got it. They list who got loans. They list how much they got. These PPP loans are administered through a bank, through a private bank, and there's not the same level of transparency, but there needs to be because it's public money. And we need to know where it's going. And some of the statistics that I'm seeing for North Texas, for some of our minority businesses, are very concerning to me, very, very concerning to me. And so I've done Zoom webinars with every single chamber I can find, with every single group that has any level of outreach into our minority small businesses, because I want them to know everything they can and be armed with the information so that we can compete for this funding as well. And so we want to make sure that this is, as you said, equitable, I think is the right word here. Yes. And so this next round is going to be doing that. We're also going to be trying to provide funding for our cities and our states. And you mentioned that the cities program is going to be closing pretty soon. Well, they've had so much interest, they can't keep some of these programs open that they've created. And it's not just this, it's the mortgage forgiveness stuff that they have, the stuff to keep folks from getting kicked out of their homes. There's been so much need and demand for it that they run out of the money they created for it. And so we have to cover some of their gaps and some of their costs. Unfortunately, the city of Dallas is furloughing 500 employees because they don't have the revenue coming in normally the city takes in because people aren't out doing the things they normally are doing. And so we have to cover those costs to make sure that we're not adding to the unemployment problem. And a lot of our veterans work for the city, work for the state, and a lot of our veterans also work for the post office, which we're trying to save as well. And I'm sure VR, you know all about that. We have 92,000 veterans working for the post office across the country. It's the highest percentage, I think, of any agency in the government in terms of how many veterans work there. And so the last thing I'll mention, just for all of our folks who are on the line, not the last thing, but is that we did get the Garland VA hospital created now. And so we had the hospital Baylor Scott and White had in Garland that was no longer being used. We got it donated to the VA. And so it's already open. It already has, I think, up almost 200 beds that are available. It's being used right now for COVID-19 patients, and it's going to be used going forward for various outpatient things, kind of take some of the load off of the South Dallas VA, and it's going to eventually become a fully functioning VA hospital. And so to anybody who's on the north side of the county, or anybody who has any friends or any veterans who are up there, this is something that's going to be a good option for you and for your family to consider. And so you can contact us and we can help you if you're wondering, time frames and when you can go do what. Of course, not all of it has been transferred, and it's going to take some time for that to get fully up and running. But it's a really exciting thing for our veterans here in North Texas. It's going to serve 184,000 additional veterans on the north and northeastern side of the county, and so it's a lot more convenient for folks. And so it's a good option. And I'll just end by saying, VR, as you know, we're here to help. And let me just stress this: you can call my office anytime, even if you're not in my district. We help everybody. We try to look out for every veteran in the state. I'm only one of 2 Texans in the entire state delegation who's on the Veterans Affairs Committee, and I'm the only one in North Texas who's on the Veterans Affairs Committee. So really, any issue a veteran is having, I want to know about it. We want to help. If any of these programs, if you think they're not working, that's also something to tell us. We know it's not perfect. If there's something you think we should consider differently, if there's anything we can do specifically for our veterans during this time, it's really important to me and to my staff. So please let everybody know. You can always reach out to us. My website is allred.house.gov. All of our contact information is on there. You can email us, you can call us. You can't go by the office in Dallas right now because we are working remotely still, but we are here to help. So just anything we can do, VR, we're always here to help. And thank you for everything you do and all of your leadership.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I want to echo what the Congressman said. He has always been responsive to us, him and his entire team. They've been out to our facility. And so I can tell you personally, when a Congressman says you can reach out and they will try to get an answer to your questions, believe that. And if you want to reach out, do reach out. I do want to open it up. I know you do have to go, but I do want to give others on the line an opportunity to pose a question. I do not see any questions in the chat room. So if you do have a question, you can present it in the chat room, send it to me privately, which I haven't received any. But you were pretty good, Congressman, in sharing a lot of good information. So I want to thank you for that. And I don't see any specific questions yet. So I do want to say again, thank you so much for coming and spending this time with us, bringing us up to date. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm going to recommend you also get on the Small Business Committee. That's just my recommendation.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But we love having you on the Veterans Committee, and we know and appreciate the work that you do. So thank you again for your time. And I know you have to run, and I don't see any additional questions. So have a great day.
Well, if anybody has any, they can always contact us, and we'll get back to them. And if they send you anything VR, you can send it over to us, and we'll get back to them too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all. All right, you too.
All right, I want to get back to our associate administrator. Congressman gave us some great information and some lead lines for you to jump right into. Our associate administrator. And one of the things he was talking about was his concerns in our district. And I know you don't break it down by districts because you cover a national perspective, but his concern was that a lot of the small businesses still did not get to the table. And I'm just wondering, how is the SBA gathering its information from the banks? And what are you guys seeing?
Well, excuse me, the congressman made a very valid point, and it's something that we are definitely taking a look at. And like he was spot on when he talked about the economic injury disaster loan program being an in-house program. So we have more control over the data, if you will, there. But our Office of Capital Access that's working with the banks for the PPP program are working to put that data together, because it's, you know, whether it's veterans or, you know, minority owned businesses and so forth, you know, people are asking for that information. And we do know, as the congressman indicated, with that second round of the PPP, setting aside 60 billion for underserved communities is something that's very important and something that our administrator stresses.
Administrator, did we open it back up again? Because when I first spoke to Congressman Vesey, he was telling us that it wasn't open, that it was really kind of processing all of those loans that were in the spin that didn't get processed because the money ran out. Did we in fact open it back up for other businesses to apply?
Okay, so right now, VR, the economic injury disaster loan program has been focused on the farming community. So we're processing applications from farmers. And for those who are in the queue, we're processing those on, you know, first come, first serve basis, but we haven't opened it back up yet for the general public.
And the PPP?
The PPP is currently open.
Okay, so it is open.
Yes.
Right, so for everyone on the line, if you did not apply, there are a multitude of community banks at the Veteran Women's Enterprise Center website, veteranwomensec.org. We have a COVID-19 resource center, and we also have a link to many of the community banks that you can outreach to that are doing those small business loans. If you are in fact a small business and you have not or do not have an ongoing banking relationship to process your loan. And I believe the SBA has that list too, Administrator.
Yeah, you know, and again, you know, going back to what I said earlier about connecting with the resource partners in your community, you know, I urge the listeners to connect with the resource partners, because just like the congressman said, you know, it may not necessarily be a PPP loan, but, you know, our business advisors are in place to help set expectations and to, in some cases, you know, guide the prospective borrower to maybe an alternate source of funding. You know, we're on the veteran side of the house, you know, we're affiliated with the CDFIs, you know, and community banks that, you know, specifically, you know, focus on veterans. So, you know, rather than, you know, try to navigate the system and think through things on your own, please come to SBA, to one of our resource partners. And in the case, like I said earlier, the SBDCs and the women business centers, they have additional funding to help, and they know all of this.
And we have a local veteran business outreach center, so they're also a part of that team, and you can certainly reach out to them for support, for mentorship, for direction as well as we have here in Dallas, our Women's Business Center through Lift Fund. And of course, we have our Small Business Development Centers, and the Veteran Women Enterprise Center is a SCORE center. Plus we have our Dallas and our Fort Worth SCORE chapters who are all here to support you and have been trained in how to help you through these different loans that the SBA is providing.
You know, I do want to touch on one thing that the congressman talked about, and that was the PPP, the forgiveness aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was talking about the breakdown, if you will, you know, it's like 75% for payroll, and then 25% for other costs, you know, mortgage, you know, your lease, you know, overhead type of things and things of that nature. And just like the congressman said, you know, the loan, if you bring your employees back on the payroll and keep them on record for 8 weeks, then the loan reverts to a grant, and then it's forgivable. But again, this is something that the listeners need to work through this with the banks. And I think, you know, the congressman was talking about, you know, misinformation and things of that nature. I want the listeners to appreciate the fact that the law was signed into the first round of PPP was signed into effect on the 27th of March. And then we immediately started implementing the program while, you know, we have Treasury, SBA, and others, OMB, you know, trying to analyze the law. So there's, you know, like say loan forgiveness, for example, we're still working through the aspects of how that is going to work. So my point being, in terms of, you know, additional information, this is when, if you've received a PPP loan, you really need to stay in touch with the lender, because the lender will be involved in, you know, getting that information as to how forgiveness is going to work and so forth.
Okay, I thought it was interesting, and I didn't get to ask the congressman, and I don't know how big of an issue is, but it sounds like it could be an issue for particularly small business owners. There was a lot of focus on the news about individuals saying, okay, I've applied for unemployment. I'm actually making more money on unemployment than I am if I go back and work for this company that's saying, hey, I'm ready to bring you back and give you the salary we were giving you before. How are we, or how are you guys looking to deal with those kind of situations, since we kind of sweeten the pot for unemployment, but that doesn't change what an employer is able to pay their employees, and they've got to base that based on their previous payroll, so they can't change any of those numbers.
Yeah, we have had employers who have, you know, made the decision to, I guess, side with what is best for their employees. But like the congressman mentioned, you know, you may have those unemployment benefits, but now you talk about health care, you know, and other benefits that may go by the wayside. And what we tell the business owner is, and the congressman, again, you know, he talked about the expertise, the experience you have in your staff, as opposed to going out looking for new people and things of that nature. But the entire point of the PPP program is to make sure, you know, that you're up and running day one when the economy opens back up. So now if you're a business owner and you decide that it's more advantageous to your employees to allow them to file for unemployment, you know, all we can do is advise, because now you're talking about, you know, possibly looking for a new staff, and then that time, you know, that you're going to lose between, you know, looking for a new staff, opening back up, and so forth. There's a cost, and you know, and I know you know this, we are working with business people, you know, there's a cost associated with time. And that's what we're trying to do with the PPP. Cut the amount of.
I think it's important to understand. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off, Administrator? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's important to understand that a lot of the business owners aren't really making this decision because it took a while for the money to get distributed. By the time they received their PPP money, a lot of their employees had hurried up and, you know, applied for unemployment, were starting to get a check. And then all of a sudden the employee comes back and says, oh, well, now I've got this PPP money. I want to bring you guys back on. but they were already at minimum wage or not far from minimum wage. They're actually getting, and like you said, they're not getting their benefits, but for cash dollars, which are what a lot of people are looking at, they're getting a little bit more. And it's not really the employees saying, hey, go get an unemployment. It's that at the time, they didn't have the money to bring them back on. So the only option for that staff person was unemployment. And now that they're getting it, they're making a decision between whether they want to go back to a job that's paying them a little bit less. And remember, some of these lower end jobs are not paying healthcare or not paying extensive healthcare.
Now, I can certainly understand that. You know, I just wanted to touch on another thing that the Congressman talked about as well. You know, like, you know, one of the things, you know, we're hearing, you know, from time to time, people who did receive the PPP is they're trying to figure out what to do with the funding, you know, and, you know, kind of wondering about forgiveness. And so what we're telling business owners is if you receive the PPP, you know, go ahead on and spend the funds, you know, do what you need to do to save your business. And if you miss the 75-25% ratio, just keep in mind, you know, it's for the PPP, it's a 2-year loan, 1% interest, no collateral. We're not looking for fees or anything. And, you know, this thing about worrying about how forgiveness is going to be, we're looking to have the program be as liberal as possible, because, you know, there was the period where you had to certify yourself as the being in need of funding, if you will, the necessity and so forth. You know, folks worry about that. What I would say to the audience is, unless you have a criminal mindset, and we have recently run into our first couple of people who are going to be taken care of in the criminal justice system, if you will. You know, folks that have gone out and said, you know, I own a business, this is X number of people I have, and then later on the FBI and others find out that's not the case. Those are the people who, you know, have something to worry about. If you've done this in good faith, you know, making the case that it was necessary for the funding, you're working with your lender. You know, we're looking to be as liberal as possible, not looking to hold anybody at, you know, quote, accountable and things of that nature. The bottom line is the funding is there. We want you to keep the doors open. You know, the small business community is the backbone of the American economy, and the federal government is doing everything we can to support the small business owner who's operating in good faith, understanding that this is like building a plane as you fly, if you will, because this is all brand new to everyone.
So I did have another question, Associate Administrator. At one time, they were asking businesses to prove that they were directly impacted negatively by COVID-19. And I know we had a private conversation about what happens to those businesses who were just breaking even from the very beginning when COVID-19 started, and those businesses who may have been struggling when all of this started. How do they demonstrate that this has further impact their business when their profit and loss statement isn't going to show that they had a profit? It's going to show that they were breaking even, or it may even show a loss. How do they back in and show that this has been still an impact to them so that they can get into this game and keep their businesses alive?
Okay, I will tell you, like for the economic injury disaster loan program, I have had business, owners who have reached out to me directly and describe that situation that you've just talked about. And I think it's one of these where it's a situation where we have to have that conversation. So I'm thinking of one business owner in particular who I said, give me your particulars again, give it to me in an email. And I was able to get back with our Office of Disaster Assistance. They re-looked at the situation, and then the business owner was able to, participate in the program. So it's one of these where if you're in touch with, a customer service rep or your loan officer with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, our Office of Disaster Assistance, this is a conversation that the business owner and that loan officer has got to have.
So this would be with SBA, because SBA is doing the disaster assistance.
We're doing the economic injury disaster loan program,
Mhm.
and then the PPP is done through the bank, the banking community. And again, I would be the a conversation with the lenders as well, because the lenders, they want to help, because this is a good deal for them. It's a good deal for the business owner, but it's one where and veterans, we know how to pivot. We know how to, in terms of taking risks, we know how to articulate the mission. This is one where you really have to have that discussion with the lender.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that everyone is on the line is listening, that the doors are still open. Please don't make assumptions about whether you qualify, apply, work with your lender. If you don't have a lender, there are lenders out there that are open to developing new relationships right now so that they can support you through this process. But please don't make any assumptions about whether or not you qualify, about what you're qualified for. Get to the table, put in an application, and then follow through with anything that you think is not fair. Certainly you can reach out to us, send us an email if you're not able to get through to other people, and we'll connect you with either your representative, or we'll reach out to the social administrator who will connect us with someone who can help you. But I want to stress to everyone on this call, if you have not gotten to the table, if you do not have the funding that you need, there is still funding available. Don't make any assumptions. Apply, apply, apply.
And let me just say this about that, VR. Like, normally SBA, we work with like a little under 2,000 lenders. And to get this funding out, we've more than doubled the lenders. We're working with over 5,000 lenders now. We streamlined the process to allow lenders to apply to become SBA lenders. And we've taken them, like I said, up our numbers to over 5,000 lenders now. So if the listeners are looking for a lender, you can go to, and I'll say this really slowly, SBA.gov/paycheck protection/fine. And you'll a window will open up where you put your zip code in, and then you'll get every lender in your zip code that's participating in the program. So that's the first.
One more time.
Okay, so it's SBA.gov/paycheck protection/fine, FIND. And then you'll get like I said, you'll get a window where you put your zip code in. And, I recently, tried it, once again to see what our numbers were like for my zip code. I think I had like about 48 lenders in the Virginia area where I live that's participating in the program. We've also extended it to, some of the fintech companies, like the PayPals and others that are participating in the program. We want to help. We want to get the funding out. And we know the small business community need it. And so that's the first thing I would say. And then the second one, I cannot emphasize enough, and you just did it as well, VR, about looking, going and getting advice from a resource partner, from the resource partners that can help you, either if you're having problems with the filling out the application for the Paycheck Protection Program, they can help you with that. And if the Paycheck Protection Program is something that's not, in your wheelhouse, for example, they can help you with finding additional lenders who are out there willing to help as well.
That's perfect.
Not to mention the fact that after all of this is over, we started talking about resource partners. I think we all agree we're not going back to the world we just left. So in the event you need, that just, to have a discussion about your business model, or, what your marketing strategy should be. Or, one of the things, I had a business owner call me last night and said, hey, I got the Paycheck Protection Program. You know, I'm all set, but he's worried about his customer base. You know, so the customer base might be something you might need to discuss. You know, revenue drivers, use of social media. You know, because now social media is going to be even more important going forward. You know, accounting practices, vendor relationships. If you're in the supply chain, I bring all that up to say our business advisors are here to help you strategize on how you're going to move forward after COVID-19. Because, like I said a second ago, we're definitely not going back to the world we left.
And I want to add to that, just for those that are on the line, if you are a part of our network or not, we're going to be starting a mastermind group just for that, to help you figure out next steps, to help you find partners and ways to collaborate, to go after contracts. So we're not waiting for this to be over. We need to start preparing now. You need to have a strategic plan. You need to have strategic partners, and you need to know how you're going to get back into this game. And no one's going to tell you that. You're going to have to get in the game and find those resources, find those connections, and make sure that you're ready. There are going to be lots of opportunities, but if you're not ready to take advantage of them, other people are going to jump out in front of you, and you're going to wonder what happened next, because we have to be ready. You have to have a plan. And I encourage you, if not with us, as the administrator said, connect with one of the SBA partners. You have SCORE, the Small Business Development Centers. You have the Veteran Business Outreach Center and our Women's Center here, to connect with whomever you find most relevant and supportive of you, but make a connection, get a mentor, and start developing your strategic plan now so that you're ready to forge forward. Administrator, is there anything you want to share with us?
Hello, VR.
Is there anything else you want to share with us, Administrator? And if you all have questions, please send them to me privately, and I'm going to present them to the Administrator.
No, I appreciate you having me here today, VR. I appreciate our partnership and you addressing the needs of the community. And as far as I'm concerned, you're our eyes and ears on the ground. I'm here in the nation's capital, but you're where the rubber meets the road. And so I just want to, make sure that, we, going forward, and I know we will, that we continue our partnership. And anytime you need to have me on, just, reach out, I'll be there.
Okay, so we do have time left. If you have questions for the Administrator, can you go ahead and shoot those over to me? And we'll make sure we get them answered. I'm sure I didn't touch on everything or every issue, because each one of you have a unique business, unique strategies, and maybe even unique situations that you're trying to address. So if you have any questions, please shoot them over to me. They'll be coming to Veteran Women's Enterprise Center, or I'll be listed as VR Small.
And I'll just say VR, if you get them, questions, because I'm going to have to go in a minute or so, but again, just do like we always do. Just call me and we'll walk through them.
Okay. So if we don't have any additional questions, it is 10:55. I don't want to keep you on. So I have a question here. Okay, so I have someone here who applied for the PPP loan and said they were denied because they couldn't they showed a loss in 2019. So maybe we can get on a call and follow up.
I was going to say, if you could get if we could get the particulars or get that particular business owner
we can see
on a call, yeah, that would work.
All right, so I see your question, and that's what we're going to do, Sharon. We're going to get you on a call and see if we can figure out what's happening or what happened with your loan. Okay, do we have any other questions? As always, Associate Administrator, thank you so much for being available to us, for the information that you shared. And if any other questions come through, I'll be sure to reach out to you and your team about doing a collaborative call to see how we can help them get the support that they need. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Again, mark your calendars every Monday until we end this. We'll be doing our Monday morning message, connecting you with the resources that you need to succeed. It is at 10 a.m. Central Time, so you can mark your calendars and also look for our Trending Thursday Tips, which is every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Thank you again and have a great Monday. Thank you, Administrator.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right, same to you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.